ECW Hardcore Revolution, released in February 2000 for the Game Boy Color, courtesy of Acclaim Entertainment and Crawfish Interactive, is the sequel to 1999's WWF Attitude game on the system, and I call it such because much like the console iterations of the same name, Hardcore Revolution is pretty much similar to the Attitude game that also graced Game Boy Color, which we looked at in a previous review. And when I say similar, it's pretty much a carbon copy, with some differences here and there. So, just to get the basics out of the way, Hardcore Revolution gives you 10 wrestlers from the former Extreme Championship Wrestling promotion for you to choose from. You have a career mode and a challenge mode, both variations of the old pick a wrestler and beat everyone else to win the title formula, complete with passwords earned between matches to keep track of your progress and continue at a later time. There's also a training mode to practice your moves. As for match types, you only have two, a standard singles match and a barbed wire match where the ring ropes are replaced with barbed wire that hurts you when you run into them, and that's pretty much it. Much like in Attitude, you wrestle the other guy until you're able to score a pinfall victory. You can also win via countout, which was never a thing in the old ECW, but whatever. And the idea is straightforward: one button kicks and the other is an all-purpose interact button, which includes throwing punches, initiating grapples, climbing turnbuckles, and picking up any stray weapons and tossing them at your opponent. Yes, Hardcore Revolution has weapons, occasional pieces of junk that appear in the ring so that they can be tossed at wrestlers, the closest thing to extreme hardcore action that you're going to get in this Hardcore Revolution game on Game Boy Color. There's a couple changes from the previous game. You have a proper health meter instead of the multiple stacks of meter of varying colors, and instead of that dot thing, you have a proper special meter that builds up whenever you hit big moves. And once that meter is full, you can execute your wrestler's signature move by pressing both the A and B buttons while in the appropriate position. Depends on the wrestler. These are good changes because it shows there was some effort in trying to fix what needed a bit of tweaking at least. And for what it's worth, Hardcore Revolution is certainly an improvement over Attitude in some respects and a downgrade in others. Control-wise, it works well enough. Pulling off special moves shouldn't be much of a problem. Everyone pretty much has the same set of moves save for their signatures, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's something you pretty much have to expect with some of these games on these consoles. With a single health stock, matches are a lot shorter, perhaps a bit too short at times, but regardless, wrestling a match is somewhat more manageable. The AI isn't prone to looping atomic drops like in Attitude, attempting pinfalls isn't as problematic as it was in Attitude, and the collision detection, while still not great at times, is a little better this time around. So there's definitely an upward trend here in Hardcore Revolution. With that having been said, there are some nagging issues in Hardcore Revolution. Recovery from the ground is still somewhat problematic, with the trademark log roll from Attitude still being a thing. Top rope moves still have homing capabilities that hit you even if they're jumping all the way from the other side of the ring, making them extremely difficult to dodge. Not to mention entirely unrealistic, but whatever. Weapons don't add much to the gameplay, they're just kinda sorta there, and it seems to be a random thing, as some matches have them while others don't, but otherwise you could play a match without ever touching a weapon. And while the overall experience has seen something of an improvement, the overall package is something of a step down, with a much smaller talent pool, no tag team matches of any kind, and generally little variety. The barbed wire match may be the closest thing to feeling like an ECW hardcore thing, but it's still a regular match with spikes on the sides of the ring, and is no substitute for a steel cage match. Visually speaking, Hardcore Revolution is pretty much on par with Attitude in terms of graphical prowess, which isn't really saying much because it's the same ring with the same audience and the same wrestler models slightly redressed to kinda sorta resemble the ECW wrestlers they're supposed to represent. Though really, you could just call them anything and it wouldn't really matter. In its defense, it's not a bad looking game, just nothing special. The portraits of the superstars during the player select screen is pretty solid, while the menus and whatnots are fairly basic fare, perhaps a bit too basic. And while the audio front isn't anything special either, at the very least this ECW game does have a few choice musical tracks. Mind you, nothing resembling ECW themes or anything like that, just stock music bits for the sake of it, but it's not the same droning, jazzy tune that was in Attitude. So that's something, I suppose. Overall, well, this was a pleasant surprise actually. Despite being bred from the same breed of game that housed WWF Attitude, ECW Hardcore Revolution on Game Boy Color took the gameplay of the previous game, refined a couple things here and there, and left us with a rather competent, dare I say, enjoyable little wrestling game. I'd go so far to say it's probably the second best wrestling title I've played on the Game Boy Color, with WrestleMania 2000 taking the crown. It's certainly the best ECW video game that I've played, so that's something. The lesser content and remaining quibbles might not appeal to some folks, but it's still a pretty solid little wrestling game and one worth checking out.